On Everest, one of the dominoes was the fact that they had relatively inexperienced people on the mountain that were guided. Another domino that came in was an unexpected storm that nobody even saw coming. And the last domino was people not turning around at the agreed time. That was a safety factor. Those three dominoes combined resulted in the tragedy, or part of the tragedy that happened on Everest.
A good example of this domino effect that we're talking about was when one of my instructors, when I was learning to mountaineer, told me about a summit attempt that they'd done on Gannett Peak, which is the highest peak in Wyoming. At one point on their attempt, they had dropped a rope. So that was the first thing, right? So then they go through the whole process and they're climbing up, and then the weather turns sour. That's the second domino. And they're still making their summit, and then two of the students had an argument, third domino, towards the summit on whether or not they were going to turn around and come back down or they were going to go for the summit. And so they eventually came back down. When you review this accident, you look at it, and as soon as that rope dropped, you're like, okay, here we go. Right? As soon as that one domino falls, you already know that something's going to go wrong. And what had eventually happened is because the weather was turning sour and they all had to rappel down one rope as opposed to having two, it slowed everything down. So they got trapped on the face a lot longer than expected in the sour weather. And at one point, a rock had dislodged and hit one of the students in the head, and that the student was killed. And so then they had to lower the body down in a sleeping bag, bring in a chopper, the whole works. And so you can see how one thing going wrong, if you don't get on top of it then, I mean, I would even suggest at that point they may have considered dropping that first rope. Okay, well, maybe another day.
As a guide and a mountaineer, I'm always thinking about what if. What if this happens? What if things go wrong? I'm looking at my worst case scenario and I'm working from there. It's almost like saying that I'm a pessimist with an optimist's outlook. I'm looking at the bad side and things can only get better. So I'm looking for the worst case scenario, and then anything else that happens is going to be above that. When you're moving through the mountains, everybody gets focused on looking where they're going, and they don't often look back, and that can present quite a problem. If anything happens, if there's an emergency or the weather closes in on you and you need to retreat, it's very, very easy to get lost. So it's very important just to stop every once in a while and take a look where you've come from, because that gives you a good idea of the country you're traveling through, and it changes your perspective on where you're going as well. It gives you a very balanced view of the type of country that you're traveling through. So on a safety aspect, that's important. The bottom line is if you kill your client, you don't have a business anymore, and that's where this comes from ultimately. So standards are being put into place often from accidents that happen. An accident happens in the mountains, they do a risk assessment of that, and often from that risk assessment they're trying to find a way to make it work so that it doesn't happen again.
Is it important that if somebody steps on the rope, or if I would step on the rope, that I tell you right away?
Yeah, that's very important. For example, if you step on the rope, you can get sand in the rope, and that's damaging the integrity of your rope, but you won't always be able to see it. You'll hold the rope up, you'll look at it, it'll feel okay, and you'll go, oh, that's fine, and you'll climb on that. And if you're pushing the limits where you could land up taking a long leader fall, that rope could break. You need to have a good level of communication. Ultimately, it's everybody's safety concerned. So the person that steps on the rope needs to realize that it's his safety as well.
Everybody makes mistakes, and that's part of it. But you also want to be proactive around that and make sure that those mistakes don't get carried away, and attempt to implement any learnings before things go too far.